Stop what you are doing right now, because what just happened in the Persian Gulf in the last few hours is not a continuation of the Iran war you have been following since February 28th. It is a fundamental escalation that changes everything about how this conflict ends, what you pay for energy for the rest of this year, and whether the global economy can absorb what is coming next. And the number that tells you everything you need to know is this one. Brent crude just surged more than 7% to $111.23 per barrel in a single afternoon. And the reason it did is that Iran just bombed the single most important energy facility on the face of the earth. Ras Laffan Industrial City in Qatar, home to the world's largest liquefied natural gas export terminal, the facility that produces approximately 1/5 of all the LNG that powers homes, factories, hospitals, and heating systems across Europe, Asia, and the developing world, was struck tonight by Iranian ballistic missiles, and QatarEnergy, the state company that operates it, confirmed in an official statement that the facility sustained significant damage, that fires broke out in at least two separate locations, corroborated by NASA infrared satellite imagery showing heat signatures in areas that do not normally register, and that the full scale of the damage is still being evaluated. Qatar's foreign ministry called it a dangerous escalation, a flagrant violation of state sovereignty, and a direct threat to national security and regional stability, and said Qatar reserves the right to respond in accordance with the right to self-defense guaranteed under international law, and then expelled Iran's military and security attachés from the country, a diplomatic rupture between two countries that had maintained a working relationship for decades, based on their shared interest in the enormous gas reserves that lie beneath both their territorial waters. And before we get into exactly what Ras Laffan is, why 1/5 of the world's LNG coming from a single location in a country the size of Connecticut is one of the most dangerous concentration risks in global energy infrastructure, what this means for your heating bill, your electricity bill, and the price of everything that gets manufactured using natural gas, and how this escalation connects to a chain of decisions made in Washington that nobody adequately stress tested before the first missile flew on February 28th. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell, because the story we are covering tonight is not going to be fully understood by most people for days. And by the time they understand it, the consequences will already be landing in their bills and their bank accounts. Let us start with what Ras Laffan actually is, because most Americans have never heard of it. And that unfamiliarity is part of why what happened tonight is so significant. Ras Laffan Industrial City is a purpose-built industrial complex constructed on the northeastern coast of Qatar, approximately 80 kilometers north of Doha, on a stretch of desert coastline that was essentially empty scrubland in 1996, when Qatar began building what would become the largest LNG export infrastructure on Earth. And the scale of what was built there in 30 years is genuinely staggering. The complex covers an area of more than 250 square kilometers, making it larger than many major American cities. It employs more than 100,000 workers from dozens of countries. It contains 14 LNG liquefaction trains, each one a massive industrial facility that takes raw natural gas, chills it to negative 160 degrees Celsius until it becomes liquid, and loads it onto specially designed tankers that carry it to buyers in Japan, South Korea, China, India, France, Spain, Italy, Belgium, the United Kingdom, and dozens of other countries that depend on it to heat their homes and power their grids. QatarEnergy produces approximately 18.5 billion cubic feet of gas per day from the North Dome field, the largest single natural gas reservoir in the world. And that production makes Qatar responsible for roughly 20% of all LNG traded globally, which means that one country, one company, and one industrial complex in the northeastern corner of the Arabian Peninsula supplies 1/5 of the world's traded liquefied natural gas. European gas benchmark prices jumped 6% on Wednesday following the attack, according to data from ICE Futures Europe, and that number will be higher by the time you watch this, because the markets were still processing the full extent of the damage when those figures were published, and the S&P analysts who cover energy markets describe the situation using a technical term that has very non-technical consequences for ordinary people. Bullish, meaning prices are going up and the pressure is coming from multiple directions simultaneously. Here is the sequence of events that led to tonight's attack, because it did not come out of nowhere. And understanding the chain of escalation tells you something important about the logic driving this war that the administration has not been adequately explaining to the American public. On Wednesday morning, the United States and Israel executed a strike on Iran's South Pars gas field at Asaluya, a port city on Iran's southern coast that serves as the onshore processing center for the largest natural gas reservoir in the world. And a U.S. defense official confirmed to Axios that the Israeli strike on South Pars was approved in advance by the White House, meaning this was not a unilateral Israeli decision, but a jointly authorized operation that the administration signed off on South Pars supplies approximately 80% of Iran's domestic natural gas for electricity generation and home heating. And Iranian gas flows to Iraq were halted after the attack, according to a senior Iraqi official who told Reuters, a disruption that matters because Iran supplies between 30 and 40% of Iraq's electricity and gas needs, meaning a U.S.-approved strike on an Iranian gas field is now threatening power and heating for millions of Iraqi civilians who had nothing to do with the decision to close the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's response came within hours. Its Revolutionary Guard issued a formal warning through state media telling Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates to evacuate their petrochemical facilities immediately, naming specific targets including Saudi Arabia's Samref refinery and Jubail petrochemical complex, the UAE's Al Hosn gas field, and Qatar's Ras Laffan refinery and Mesaieed petrochemical complex, and saying these facilities have become direct and legitimate targets and will be targeted in the coming hours. Therefore, all citizens, residents, and employees are requested to immediately leave these areas and move to a safe distance without any delay. That warning was not a bluff. Iranian ballistic missiles struck Ras Laffan hours later. QatarEnergy confirmed significant damage. Fires were recorded by satellite, and Europe's gas prices jumped 6% before the markets had even fully processed what had happened. Drop a comment below right now and tell me whether you think the administration understood before February 28th that striking Iran's energy infrastructure would trigger Iranian strikes on the Gulf's energy infrastructure. Because that is the question that every senator and every energy economist and every allied foreign minister is asking tonight. And the answer to it determines whether what happened today was a calculated risk that was accepted or a consequence that was not adequately anticipated. Now let us talk about what this means for you sitting in America, watching this on your phone or your laptop or your television, because the Ras Laffan attack is not a story about a country you have never visited being struck by missiles from another country you have never visited. It is a story about the architecture of the global energy system and how one night in Qatar is going to change your bills for months. The United States is a net energy exporter, which means it produces more oil and gas than it consumes, and the administration has repeatedly cited this fact as evidence that Americans are insulated from energy disruptions in the Middle East. But that argument has a fundamental flaw that every energy economist who has been asked about it has explained in the same terms. American energy prices are set on global markets, not domestic ones. When a Saudi refinery burns, when a Qatari LNG terminal sustains significant damage and declares force majeure on its export contracts, when Iran threatens to strike 5 more Gulf energy facilities in the coming hours, global energy prices go up. And when global energy prices go up, American energy prices go up, regardless of how much oil is being pumped out of the Permian Basin or how many LNG terminals are operating on the Gulf Coast of Texas and Louisiana. Brent crude settled at $107.38 on Wednesday afternoon before the full extent of the Ras Laffan damage was known, and WTI, the American benchmark, crossed $100 per barrel, and the trajectory from here depends entirely on whether Iran follows through on its threat to strike Saudi Arabia and the UAE, in addition to what it has already done in Qatar, which is the question that energy traders and geopolitical analysts and National Security Council staff are all staring at right now with no reliable answer. Laurent Roussecas, an analyst at S&P Global Commodity Insights, said the South Pars strike would prompt a bullish stance for global LNG benchmarks and that Turkish buyers displaced by any Iranian supply shortfall would seek replacement LNG cargoes, tightening the market on the margin, and that analysis was published before Iran actually struck Ras Laffan, meaning the tightening he was describing as a risk has now become an event. Here is the wider strategic picture that ties all of this together and that the White House press briefings have not been connecting for the American public. On February 28th, the United States approved a military operation based on a theory that a swift and powerful series of strikes would decapitate Iran's leadership, shatter its command structure, and produce a political collapse that would lead to a negotiated settlement on American terms, and the operation did succeed in killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, which was its primary military objective. What the theory did not adequately account for was succession, retaliation, and escalation dynamics, the three factors that determine whether a decapitation strike produces the political outcome it was designed to create, or whether it simply removes one obstacle and creates three new ones. Iran named Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader within 72 hours, faster than any Western intelligence assessment projected. And the new supreme leader immediately declared the war would continue, that the Strait of Hormuz would remain closed, and that Iran would use every tool available to impose costs on the countries that had attacked it. And every day since then has been a demonstration of what using every tool available means in practice. 17 service members killed, 7 allied nations publicly refusing to send warships to help reopen the strait, oil above $100 a barrel, European gas up 6% in one afternoon, the world's largest LNG terminal burning, and Iran threatening 5 more strikes on Gulf energy infrastructure in the coming hours. Sheikh Nawaf Al Thani, a former Qatari general who now heads the Council on International Mediation, said the quiet part out loud tonight. When LNG facilities are brought into the line of fire, this is no longer just a regional conflict. It is a direct threat to global energy security. Global energy security means the heating systems in German homes and the factories in South Korea, and the power grids in Japan, and the stoves in Indian kitchens, and the electricity bills in French apartments, and yes, the gas prices at every station in every American city and town. Because the world runs on energy, and 20% of the world's LNG just came from a facility that is on fire tonight in Qatar. The Fed held rates on Wednesday, and Jerome Powell said the implications of the Iran war for the American economy remain uncertain, which is central banker language for we do not know how bad this gets, and we are watching. And the Dow fell 768 points on the same day, and now Ras Laffan is burning. If this video told you something about what is actually happening in the global energy system tonight that the war coverage is not putting together for you, do me a favor right now and share it with someone who deserves to understand the full picture. Because what Iran did to Ras Laffan tonight is not a side story in the Iran war. It is the moment the conflict became a direct and immediate threat to the energy that heats homes and powers economies on every continent on Earth. And the people who are going to feel it most are not in Washington making the decisions. They are at home opening their bills. We will be right here covering every development as it happens. Stay tuned and stay informed.